Good afternoon, and welcome to the WEIM Governing Body General Session meeting. Please note that all audio connections are muted. To enter the question queue, you may click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Chair Rob Konziolka. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the August 2022 Western Energy Imbalance Market Governing Body meeting. I'm Robert Konziolka and Chair of the WEIM Governing Body. To initiate the meeting, I will turn this over to Corporate Secretary Roger Colanton for roll call.
Thank you, Chair Konziolka. And we'll go ahead and take the roll call, and you'll be first. Chair Konziolka?
Here.
Vice Chair Gardner?
Here.
Member Campbell?
Here.
Member Decker?
Here.
Member Prescott?
Here.
All present, and we have a quorum, and we are able to proceed. Back to you, Chair Konziolka.
Thank you. Before moving on, I'd like to see if there is any public comment, and these would be for items that are not on the agenda. So at this point, I would ask our event producer, Roy, to see if anyone wants to make any public statements prior to us initiating our agenda.
If you would like to make any statements prior to today's agenda, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Once again, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. And it looks like we have no comments at this time.
Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is our decision on our meeting minutes from last month. And I'll turn this back over to Roger for that.
Thank you, Chair Konziolka. I have a motion to approve the July 19th, 2022 General Session minutes for the WEIM Governing Body.
This is Anita, so moved.
Second, please.
Jennifer, I second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Chair Konziolka, your vote.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gardner, your vote.
Aye.
Member Campbell, your vote.
Aye.
Member Decker, your vote.
Aye.
And Member Prescott, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you, Governing Body. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Before getting started, I have a few opening remarks. I'd like to start off by noting that long-term projections and forecasts are difficult and challenging, and especially when they are used to rely on for decision-making. 10 years ago, the most significant study to date on development of a West-wide energy imbalance market was presented to the Western Electricity Coordinating Council Board of Directors. The study was performed by a pretty good team of Ken Rosen, E3, and Utilicast to identify the value, cost, and benefits of an EIM in the West. The study was intended to provide guidance on development of a West-wide real-time energy market. This study in 2012, and looking out 10 years, projected annual cost savings of a West-wide EIM in the range of $141 million to $233 million. Which equates to a quarterly savings of about $35 million to $58 million. We will hear a presentation on the second quarter WEIM benefits that indicate that the actual benefits are turning out to be a bit better than those projected 10 years ago. Additionally, we will receive updates on the activities and plans by the BOSSR and the RIF, and we will also hear on the progress of the GRC and the status of key policy initiatives that impact the WEIM. Lastly, the governing body continues to move forward with implementation of the governing body market expert. We plan to update the WEIM website to incorporate information related to the market expert. Then over time, this will be the location where information related to the work of the market expert is located. At this point in time, I can share that the governing body's top priorities for the market expert are the transmission service and marketing schedule priorities, or more commonly referred to as the wheel-through initiative, EDAM, resource efficiency evaluation, and price formation. That concludes my opening remarks, And at this point, I'd like to turn this over to CEO and President Elliot Mainzer.
Thank you, Chair Kanzioka. I appreciate seeing you and all the members of the governing body this afternoon, and thank you for the retrospective. I always enjoy your comments there. My report this afternoon is going to be relatively brief, but I wanted to start out with a quick reliability update. As you know, we've been keeping folks continuously posted, and summer of 22 has so far gone reasonably well. We've had a reasonable degree of weather diversity across the West, but we've known that there's plenty of summer left, and it looks like summer is going to definitely make itself well known here across the course of the next week with the first significant West-wide heating event. And so particularly across the Labor Day weekend and into the early to middle part of next week, we're expecting the highest loads by some margin that we've seen across so far this year, well into the 48,000 megawatt level with significant heating across the rest of the West. So we are, of course, in the process of preparing in coordination with the utilities and the transmission operators across the West, and of course with all of our various partners here inside California, and making sure that all of the necessary tools to preserve reliability are ramped up and ready to go as we head into what is likely to be by far and away the most significant loading event we've seen so far in 2022. And we'll be keeping folks posted. Of course, I always want to note, as we saw last year, over the weekend of July 9th, with the bootleg fire, the Western Energy Imbalance Market continues to be, I think, an excellent tool, not as a source of incremental supply, but as a mechanism for optimizing amongst the balancing authorities across the West as they each grapple with their own individual conditions across the course of individual hours. And we'll expect that to persist here over the course of next week as well. And thanks to all of our partners across the West who have been working so well with us to get ready for this significant heating event. You're going to have material updates, detailed updates from a number of folks on each of the items, but I just, as noted in my CEO report, I continue to be very encouraged and deeply appreciative of the level of engagement in the development of the extended day-ahead market. Just yesterday, we hosted an all-day virtual workshop where we were able to run through a significant portion of the revised straw proposal. Very well attended, lots of outstanding questions and continued suggestions for how to make the market as efficient as possible and well designed. We really appreciate that. We'll continue that work with a day and a half of in-person meetings. Period for this round will close on the 20th of September. So really encouraging work. We really are down to the dotting of I's and crossing of T's now and trying to synthesize just the tremendous volume of input that we've received from across the West. As you mentioned, the Transmission Service and Market Scheduling Priorities Initiative, otherwise known as wheel-throughs, is I think, progressing very well. We've got our straw proposal on that item on the street. I think at this point, again, as with the other initiatives, really down into the details, looking not only at just the mechanics of the forward subscription mechanism, but looking at the data, looking at historical patterns, and making sure that we can come up with a very defensible and balanced ATC methodology that native load, but affords some inventory for wheel-throughs across the system. That work's progressing well. And yes, just last week on the 25th, we released the draft final proposal for the resource efficiency evaluation enhancements. And I'm encouraged with that work as well, really getting down to some final refinements and wanting to get that. That's going to be coming in front of the governing body and the Board of Governors for decision in October. Because we want to get that work approved so we can have it ready and in place for next summer. You'll be hearing detailed report outs on both of those initiatives, actually all three of those initiatives from Anna McKenna a little bit later in the meeting today. And of course, you're also going to get a good readout from Eric Eisenman from PG&E on the Governance Review Committee work. I know just yesterday morning they also held a public meeting on that topic. And again, just a tremendous amount of engagement and feedback on that topic as we move towards a joint authority model for EDAM. To Chair Konzioka's point, we saw another quarter of EIM benefits that were a significant multiple above what was originally forecast 10 years ago. I think the most recent quarter benefits at $287.4 million, bringing the total cumulative benefits since the WEIM was launched in 2014 to $2.39 billion. And that's, of course, the testament to just an incredible amount of work. And we're certainly hoping to build on that platform. And finally, we are very excited that for the first time since 2018, that CAISO will be hosting again this year our ISO Stakeholder Symposium. The event is going to be held in Sacramento on November 9th and 10th. And we're really excited. Just a great program coming together, lining up just an outstanding set of participants and speakers. We'll have an opportunity to spend a bunch of time on the emerging day ahead market on the first day, and then of course on the second day take a look at industry trends beyond EDAM. And so really looking forward to that. Already a large number of people already registering for that. Great sponsorship, and just certainly hoping COVID providing that we can have an absolutely fabulous event and get back to just sort of recreating that sense of community that I know that the Stakeholder Symposium provided for years before. So that concludes my report. Thank you again for all your support, and please let me know if you have any questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just check if the governing body members have any questions.
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Our next agenda item is an update on the body of state regulators. With us today is the chair of the BOSR and also chair of the Utah PSC, Tad LeVar. Tad, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Konzioka, Vice Chair Gardner, and members of the WEIM governing body. I'm happy to give the report today from the body of state regulators. I'll be addressing three issues: day-ahead market design, governance review, and the transmission service and market scheduling priorities. But first, I just want to give a thank you to Leah Fisher, who has left her role as one of the public power liaisons to the BOSR. She's no longer with Public Generating Pool. I just want to thank her for the contribution she's made to the BOSR over the past year as we've established those liaison roles, and wish her the best moving forward. And I know the stakeholders within public power are anxiously trying to get a replacement to be another liaison with us. So on the day-ahead market design, BOSR staff continue to follow the day-ahead market design developments, with additional technical workshops occurring this week and next week regarding the revised straw proposal. The BOSR is working to compile specific comments on the initiative with an incremental approach. We intend to provide, nuanced comments on one specific design concept at each commenting opportunity. Our tentative plan is to file comments on the proposal regarding the resource sufficiency evaluation by September 20th. Now, on governance review, we continue to appreciate all the time and effort that the Governance Review Committee is putting into the ongoing effort to ensure that WEIM governance evolves appropriately as the market functioning evolves. The BOSR held an ad hoc meeting at the end of last month to discuss the GRC straw proposal, and we filed our comments on August 15th. Overall, the body of state regulators generally supports the straw proposal as an appropriate incremental step reflective of the deeper independence inherent in the day-ahead market. In our comments, we asserted that the incremental nature of the straw proposal demonstrates a respect for the other governance changes that have been implemented recently and gives those time to continue to develop in their operation. The success of those changes can be evaluated more fully as we continue to have more time as they're functioning. Furthermore, having a consensus governance plan allows EDAM participants to participate in making market decisions that allows for trust in that market. It is important to continue to evolve governance to be more multilateral as the ISO implements market initiatives that involve the dispatch and control of more resources over longer periods of time. I participated yesterday in the Governance Review Committee's open meeting on behalf of the BOSR. Overall, it was a constructive meeting with parties providing their perspectives on WEIM governance in context of the developing day-ahead market. The BOSR looks forward to continued engagement on this initiative, and we look forward to the issuance of the revised straw proposal for our evaluation. And then finally, I'll just mention the transmission service and marketing scheduling priorities issues. That's a mouthful. Everybody still just calls it wheel through. But the BOSR acknowledges that this is an important initiative, and we want to provide meaningful feedback when possible throughout the initiative. We do not, at this time, plan to submit consensus comments at this phase. It should be obvious, consensus among all BOSR members is more elusive on this issue than it is on others. If there are any issues that we could reach consensus on certain design elements in the future iterations, we certainly will keep our eyes open. The fact that we may not have consensus comments does not reflect a lack of interest from the BOSR, and we certainly intend to spend time in our meetings making sure that all BOSR members are aware of how this initiative is moving forward and how it's developing. Our next BOSR meeting is a week from Friday, September 9th, and that will be a virtual meeting. And our next in-person meeting will be on September 28th from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. in Tempe, Arizona, in connection with the CREPC YRAB meetings. And we're still fine-tuning the agenda, but we anticipate it'll cover these topics roughly that I've been discussing in this report. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from anyone about what the BOSR is engaging in at this point.
Chair LeVar, let me see if there's any questions from the governing body members. I am not seeing any, so thank you. Appreciate these insights, and it's very helpful to know where the BOSR is focused on at this point and how you plan to move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, our next update will be on the Regional Issues Forum, and with us today is the RIF Vice Chair, Josh Walter. Josh.
Great. Thank you, Chair Konziolka. I have two updates for the governing body today. First, the next Regional Issues Forum meeting is this week on Thursday, September 1st, where we plan to have a presentation on the ISO's annual policy initiative roadmap, then follow up with an in-depth panel discussion on what we're dubbing the stressed market conditions in the EIM panel. So that should be a good and lively conversation with a very diverse set of panelists to help guide the conversation. Second, we are in the planning process for the next RIF meeting being held on November 8th. That is the day before the start of CAISO's annual symposium. That meeting will be held at the same location as the symposium, so we hope to get a strong level of attendance based on kind of piggybacking off the symposium, or maybe kicking off the symposium. So thus far, we've had commitments for opening remarks by both Chair Konziolka and Elliot Mainzer to help kick us off. And the substance of the meeting is still being determined, but we hope to have a strong nexus with the content of the symposium, coupled with making sure that we are using the work that the sector liaisons have done in prioritizing important issues and elements of the market that ultimately should be discussed, evaluated, educated on, all of the different elements of our charge with the RIF and the Regional Issues Forum to help inform progress in the market. So, we will continue to work towards another hopefully strong agenda for the meeting on the 8th, and very much looking forward to the conversation on Thursday on stress market conditions. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Josh. Let me check and see if there's any questions from the governing body members. And governing body members, any questions? Josh, they are letting you off easy, so no questions. Thank you for that update and for that outlook over the next 2 months. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
We next have an update on the WEIM Governance Review Committee. And with us today is Eric Eisenman, who is a member of the GRC. Eric.
Thanks, and good afternoon to the whole governing body, CAISO Management. So on behalf of the Governance Review Committee, I'd like to take a few minutes to provide an update on what the GRC's been up to in recent weeks. First, thanks to Mr. Mainzer and Commissioner LeVar for their earlier comments on the GRC. So back on July 15th, the GRC distributed a straw proposal describing potential governance enhancements to accommodate all the good work being done with EDAM. Our proposal focused on several topics, including delegation of authority, the size and composition of the governing body, stakeholder engagement, and clarifying the ISO's responsibility to consider the interests of all regional stakeholders. On July 20th, we hosted a public meeting where we presented all these different elements of the proposal to stakeholders and responded to questions. We requested comments on the straw proposal by August 15th, and we received 24 sets of really helpful comments with lots of robust feedback. And as was previously mentioned, just yesterday, the GRC hosted a general session with most of the time devoted to a stakeholder panel representing many diverse interests. The panel addressed many questions that were posed by the GRC. The largest chunk of time yesterday was spent discussing issues around delegation of authority. More specifically, the panelists and GRC members discussed details of the joint authority model. The GRC found this discussion to be helpful and insightful. Other topics discussed by the panelists included the ones I mentioned earlier, like stakeholder engagement, the size and composition of the governing body, and so on. In the coming weeks, the GRC will be working to refine the proposal based on stakeholder feedback. We expect to issue a refined proposal in late October. We'll then be asking for stakeholder feedback on that proposal before posting a final proposal in December. Our current plan is to bring this final proposal to the governing body and the CAISO board for your consideration later in December, at the same time that the EDAM market design proposal will be considered. That concludes my remarks, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Most of the governing body members were on the listening in yesterday, but I'm going to check and see if they have any questions based on your update. Eric, there are no questions from the governing body members. This is something that everyone's following very closely, and you guys have your work cut out for you.
We do, but we appreciate the feedback and the interest. And I did notice that many of you were on the meeting, did attend yesterday's meeting. So really appreciate the attention. Look forward to your continuing feedback.
And Rob, this is Jennifer. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jennifer, please go ahead.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Eric, thank you so much for that update. And I was on the call yesterday as well, and just wanted to offer my, appreciation for you and the rest of the GRC for all of the great work you're doing. And just a specific comment on the format of yesterday's meeting. I just wanted to say I really thought that the way that you guys structured that discussion with the various panels comprised of GRC members, primarily facilitating and then having stakeholders offering commentary and having a little bit of back and forth on some of these more, I don't want to say controversial issues, but just more sensitive issues that are going to take a little bit more time to fully resolve. I thought it was a really excellent way of sort of airing some of the concerns while also underscoring areas of alignment between the different stakeholder groups. And so I just wanted to commend you and the rest of the GRC for what I thought was a really productive discussion yesterday. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer, for those comments. I actually happen to agree with you that it was a really good format, and it was really insightful to hear the feedback from a real diverse group of stakeholders. And maybe the topics aren't controversial, but there certainly is not consensus at this point. So we'll be working hard. We'll be working hard on all those topics in the coming weeks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric. We will move on to our next item, which is the second quarter WEIM benefits. And with us today to go over those benefits is Guillermo Batista Alderete, who is the Cal ISO Director of Market Analysis and Forecasting. So with that, Guillermo, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me okay?
Yes, coming through loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon, members of the Western Energy Imbalance Market Governing Body. This briefing covers the EIM benefits for the second quarter of 2022. Next slide, please. Quarter 2 2022 saw significant benefits in the amount of $287 million. This is the second largest benefit observed in a quarter since the inception of the Western Energy Imbalance Market. There are several factors contributing to this level of benefits. First, we have additional entities participating in the market since quarter 2 in 2022. More entities enable more economic transactions, not just for the new entities, but also for the existing ones. Second, we continue to see robust transfers among areas, which reflect the economics of the wider footprint. And third, the economic transfers also result in economic displacement of higher value energy. When an energy transfer is realized, a cheaper energy transfer effectively displaces more expensive generation in the receiving area. This will lead to benefits in the way of cost savings. Lastly, gas prices have remained high for over a year now, and these higher gas prices will be reflected in the electric prices. Next slide, please. With the $287 million of benefits in the second quarter, the total cumulative benefit so far is $2.39 billion. This level of gross economical benefit is a testament of the value and the effectiveness of the Western Energy Imbalance Market to meet supply and demand at the least cost across the West footprint. Next slide, please. Another benefit of the market is the avoided energy curtailment. If not for energy transfers facilitated by the market, some renewable generation would be curtailed. The portion in gray here reflects the portion that is effectively curtailing the system, while the portion in blue is the avoided curtailment. The line in red reflects the cumulative avoided curtailment so far. As we can see, avoided curtailments continue to accrue over time. You can see that there is a consistent seasonal trend where we have the largest volume of curtailments accruing in the winter time frame. That is when we have the relatively low levels of demand and plenty of renewable generation. Next slide, please. A significant contributor to the benefits is transfers across the balancing areas. Transfers enable access to lower cost supply. It can also be possible that a transfer is realized between two areas that are not directly connected by means of wheeling through with a third area. We have been tracking the volume of transfers and wheel through realized in the market. This figure is an illustration of the flow of the transfers among the different balancing areas. The size of the stream flow reflects the relative volume of the transfers between two corresponding balancing areas. The left-hand side is where the transfer is coming from, that is the sourcing balancing area, and the right-hand side is the transfers where are going to. Areas on the left are exporting, while areas on the right are importing, and you can see how all these transfers come together. This is a very simple way to illustrate the interaction of the balancing areas through the transfers. and reflects the overall dynamics of the transfers across the wider footprint of the Western energy imbalance market. The robust volumes of the transfers for Q2 is reflected not only in the economical benefits indicated earlier, but also in the economics of the system-wide footprint. Next slide, please. Although the transfers can be quite dynamic, they change effectively 5 minutes to 5 minutes, they tend to have certain patterns through the time of the day. This plot illustrates the hourly profile for each month of the quarter in which the transfers happen across the different areas. A positive value represents a transfer import coming into a given area. Typically, for this time of the year, CAISO area tends to export a significant volume of energy during the midday hours because it's summertime when we have full production, and then switch to become an import for the peak hours. Other areas, such as in this Q2 case, SRP and bank, become the natural counterparties taking on these transfers as additional exports. In the second quarter,
what do you want?
Hey, just one moment, Guillermo. Let me just, if everyone would check their audio to make certain they're muted. Okay, I think we're good, Guillermo.
Thank you, Chairman. In the Q2, we see this trend well defined because it's the typical condition that we experience when we have full solar production and these economics of transfers can naturally happen. Next slide, please. Overall, prices for the second quarter were on average about $50 across the different areas. In some cases, they reached levels of up to $70. And they trended down, as we can see, coming into the June timeframe. The external bilateral prices for 3 reference points, such as Mid-C, Palo Verde, and COP, are also shown here as a reference. On average, the Western energy imbalance market prices trended lower than the bilateral prices. There is a very marked trend here, as you may see when you look at through the 3 months of the second quarter, and that is the price separation that we observed in June. This was mainly driven by congestion, either from internal or transfer constraints, that is the one that connects different balancing areas. This congestion will reflect the local economics of each individual area, and in the end, is going to reflect the locational value of energy. That is one of the pillars of the locational marginal prices that we rely on the California ISO market. That is all what I have for this update. I will be happy to take on any questions you may have.
Guillermo, thank you. I like the introduction of that one new slide. That was, the graphics are terrific. So at this time, let me see if the governing body members have any questions. And I know I see that Andy Campbell has one. Andy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Kanzioka. Thanks, Guillermo. Very, very exciting to see these results. I wanted to ask a further question on the high energy prices. Curious, any more insights on how that's affecting the EIM market? I know the futures market for natural gas shows futures market thinks natural gas prices are going to remain high through the rest of the summer, through the winter. But I'm curious if it's kind of mostly effect on just the magnitude of the value of transfers, if transfers kind of different transfers happen when natural gas prices are elevated, or any other kind of insights on how high prices are coming through to these EIM benefits. Thanks.
Yes, there are different dimensions. Thank you for the question, member of the governing body. First of all, we recognize that the gas prices have been historically high. I believe since at least early summer 2021, they have trending higher than used to be. Typically, at least for the southern part of the West, gas prices trended in the range of $3 to $5 per MMBTU. Since last summer, we have seen prices hovering in the range of $8 to $10 per MMBTU. And given the fact that in the Western energy market, we still have a significant portion of gas-based generation, they will influence directly the electric prices. So first of all, we have seen an increase overall of the electric prices because of the reflection of the gas dynamics. That is one factor. And obviously, that is going to create a very interesting dynamic across the Western energy areas, because Those that are heavily relying on gas generation are going to see naturally this price increase. That will create potentially more natural price separation with other areas that may be more heavy on renewables or hydro resources. And that could potentially enable even more transfers because now there is more economic displacement that may take place. So we have seen a very robust level of transfers, economic transfers, because of this dynamic.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm just checking to see if any of the other governing body members have questions. I don't see that they do. I do have one. And if you could elaborate on this last slide, two things. One is congestion was driving this separation. So congestion drove the prices up. And are you saying that congestion, that same congestion, drove those prices as low as they did? And generally, was it weather that was driving what happened in June, or were there other issues that were driving that?
Yes. The question and the answer is quite relative because congestion may depress prices on one side of the constraint, but at the same time, it may elevate prices on the other side of the constraint. So it's a relative movement of decreasing and increasing prices. Interesting enough, for the low prices that you may see in the month of June, and taking a reference of what areas are seeing those lower prices, you can see that they are typically located in the northwest of the system. And the prices that you can see as high as $60 tend to be in the south part of the system. So that inherently reflects that there is a local price separation between the north and the south. And it's going to tend to depress prices in the north, and it's going to tend to increase prices in the south. So that is the effect of the congestion. Now, the congestion has happened because of two main drivers. It could be because of internal congestions. These are power flow-based constraints, like internal congestions to any given balancing area, but also because of the local nature of the balancing areas. There may be some areas that have limited transfer capability, and when they exhaust that capacity, they are going to naturally be separated from the rest of the system. The price that they are going to observe is more of the local economics of that specific area. You may have, for instance, area heavy with hydro that has relatively cheaper prices. When they exhaust the transfer capability, they are going to get isolated, and they are going to reflect its own locational price that is cheaper than somebody else that is based on gas resources, for instance. So it's a relative movement. It's high and low, but it depends on where on what side of the constraint they may be located.
Thank you. If you would hold on, I'm going to now check and see if there are any questions from the public. So at this time, are there any questions for you from Guillermo, for Guillermo, or public comments to be made? And I will ask Roy if you can go through the process to make a comment.
Once again, if you would like to make a comment or have a question, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Once again, to make a comment or ask a question, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. And it looks like we have no comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will move on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Guillermo. Our next item is a briefing on policy initiatives. And as you look at the agenda, these are the ones that are kind of front and center and have the primary focus of resource efficiency, evaluation, and wheel-throughs. And with us today is Anna McKenna, the Cal ISO Vice President of Market Policy and Performance. So, Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Konzioka, and good afternoon, governing body members, members of the public, and colleagues. I'm happy to provide you today's update on the key policy initiatives that touch on the WEIM and regional markets. I'll be touching on the resource efficiency evaluation, the wheel-throughs initiatives, to take a point from Commissioner Navarre, and the EDAN, the storage enhancements, price formation, and a recently launched WEIM and Washington's Climate Commitment Act initiative that's currently underway. It's quite a bit of information. I'll try to go quickly through it and see if there's any questions. So first, on the resource efficiency evaluation, since we last spoke, as Elliot noted earlier, we posted our draft final proposal, and we did so after a significantly active stakeholder process with lots of input from stakeholders and good comments and coordination. Overall, the proposal retains the overall structure that we were thinking we put forth in the prior proposal to allow us to ensure that we can implement these changes by next summer, which is a goal that is supported and shared by all stakeholders in commenting on these issues. So as an overview of where we're at with the proposal, as I noted last time, we were considering not including the load conformance or biasing in the resource efficiency evaluation that was supported by a number of stakeholders. We also provided some modifications on the resource efficiency evaluation obligations, the targets we use to evaluate for considering WEIM transfers, imports, as well as low priority imports, and how those get treated as a result of the resource efficiency evaluation treatment. We also clarified that parties, and this was in response to stakeholders in particular, I wanted to note it, there was a concern with not being able to use low priority exports out of the CAISO to meet WEIM entities' resource efficiency evaluation. We clarified that those would continue to count, and they could do so, recognizing they have lower priority, but if they so choose to, they can continue to do so. We also clarified the firmness of low priority exports and what does it mean within the hour. We asked and we're proposing that there be a tagging rule around those low priority exports so that once we get into manual curtailments, they can be treated more easily based on their priority. So we have some proposal around that. We also are continuing to recommend that we do not reintroduce into the resource efficiency capacity test any uncertainty adders. That was a big discussion since last summer, and that seems to be still the right direction to go. And finally, and of big importance with this effort, we have now enhanced our proposal on what we refer to as the WEIM Energy Assistance Administrative Surcharge. So when entities fail, rather than freezing their transfers to the last level of transfers they experience in the WEIM, we are instead proposing to apply a surcharge and allow for transfers. And if there are economic transfers to be had, those can be had subject to a surcharge that would be applied only to the quantity of transfers that are needed to resolve any insufficiency they might have experienced. And we also have a proposal in that now with regards to the allocation of the proceeds from such surcharges. And so that's now all before stakeholders being considered. Our next steps on this is to have some draft tariff language out to be considered later in September. We're looking to get written comments back from stakeholders on the 16th. And I'm sorry, and I should have noted, on September 2nd, we'll have a stakeholder meeting to go through the proposal. And with these next steps in mind, we hope to have a final proposal towards the end of September so that we can come to you all in October for a joint decision on the proposal. I just want to remind everyone the reason why this may feel a little bit accelerated is that we really would like to have these changes in by next summer. So it's really crucial we lock down on the design as close as possible so that we can really ascertain implementation feasibility of these changes, given that we did commit to try to get them in by next summer. So that covers the resource efficiency evaluation. I see there is, Anita, you have sorry, Commissioner Decker. Oh, I apologize.
No.
Governing body member Decker.
Hey, I respond to Anita just as well. So Anna, you mentioned that the proposal does not include addressing anything with the load biasing and the load conformance. Is that going to show up? Is that going to be worked on somewhere else?
So based on the evaluation of the data that we provided earlier, and based on stakeholder feedback as well, we concluded that it was not appropriate to actually change the resource efficiency evaluation to incorporate that load biasing at this time. If is additional information that comes out, in the future, I think we can always look at that again. But our proposal right now is to not include it, and I think we'll always continue to observe and look at the performance of resource efficiency evaluation. And as you know, the Department of Market Monitoring looks at these aspects as well. And so as part of the performance, I think we'll always evaluate that. And we'll always be open to looking at things again. But right now, given we've done an extensive analysis, we're proposing not to include it.
All right. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands, but please let me know if there's any other questions. Okay, I'll move on to and I'm happy to answer questions on any of these things at the end as well if I'm going too quickly. On the wheel-through, also known as Transmission Service and Market Scheduling Initiative, better known as the wheel-through initiative, since last month's report, I'm happy to share with you that we did, and Elliot mentioned this as well, we posted our straw proposal, and we, after a lot of coordination with stakeholders through numerous working groups and working on surveying practices across the West, as well as in other ISOs and RTOs, we think that we have a reasonable straw proposal out there that's currently being considered. So at this point, what we have presented is a framework that makes available, that allows us to evaluate and make available existing available transmission capacity for purposes of priority wheel-throughs through the system that would be given equal priority to CAISO native load if they qualify. We have a proposal that allows for a subscription on a 13-month monthly rolling basis for 13 months look ahead, gives an opportunity to reveal any inventory on the system that could be made available through that process. An important element of this process is how do we account for and evaluate the native load requirements on the system and reliance on imports by native load. This is a very new area for us, and we are leveraging as much as we can other practices and other balancing authority areas as well as what other ISOs and RTOs do. But we've put forth 2 frameworks that we're considering, actually 3, because the third one is a combination of the other 2. And we're thinking, and we put some data out there around those frameworks as well to sort of get a sense of what the ATC might look like under those frameworks. You can imagine there's a lot of good conversation happening offline right now, and we're looking forward to more on this. We also posted the underlying data that we use to provide the information on the frameworks put out there. And it'll be important to really hone in on a methodology that allows for reasonable protections of native load and allows for the release of ATC for priority wheels so that we can make this a more robust process. Another element of this overall proposal, of course, is the ability to request for longer term reservations of rights with the opportunity for, potentially driving additional upgrades on the system to serve any additional. So if there isn't existing inventory on the system and customers would like to invest in those kind of rights, we're looking to provide that through a longer term process. So that's sort of the general framework out there. I'm looking forward to more conversation and feedback. We will have written comments submitted on September 8th, although based on some recent feedback this morning, we might have to change that date a little bit because I know people are looking at the data right now. We put out worksheets on the data that they can run analysis themselves because we gave all the underlying data out there. So folks are welcome to do that. And we are getting contacted already about questions about how to do so, and welcome any questions on that. Be happy to facilitate that based on what we put out there. We're hoping with this regard, with the next round, to have a revised straw proposal later in October and a meeting towards the end of October with a draft final proposal posted around the beginning of the year so that we can make a filing for FERC, because as a reminder, our existing procedure for priority wheel-throughs expires in 2024. So we want to get something at FERC early next year. And we also are cognizant that these issues relate to the EDAM design. So we're trying to get those things coordinated and sequencing them so that it provides the right set of policy changes for folks to consider. So that's the wheel-through initiative, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on that.
I'm looking to see if anyone has any questions, and no one's raising their hand or cutting in. So
I appreciate that because I can't see everybody's. My EDAM update will be probably a little bit briefer, not to reflect the extraordinary amount of activity happening in the EDAM sector, but I'm happy to report that we just had a very, very active stakeholder meeting this Monday after we posted our revised straw proposal, less than 125 pages. And I'll say that because I committed that to some members of the community, just want to say. But very good interaction so far with the stakeholder community. A lot of folks, I can tell, are reading it. We had about 350 people call in at the call on Monday with a lot of questions, recommendations, comments, clarification questions, as well as deep, really good, a lot of thought going into it. So it was really a good call on Monday. We'll continue to have that dialogue on September 7th and 8th, and we look forward to written comments on September 20th, and recognizing that, we accept comments at all times, but we're hoping to get some input on the 20th so we can then move on to our next step and consider any additional changes to the revised straw so we can move on to what we refer to as the draft final proposal, so that we can then bring to you a briefing at the end of this year of where we're at with the proposal. So in terms of sequencing, we're looking at some additional meetings, the revised the draft final proposal, on some more iterations of meetings after that. In addition to the actual proposal as it's getting developed, we're going to now post in September what we refer to as a tariff framework, which supports, if you wish, what our tariff will look like. As now that the proposal is gelling a little bit, more, we can start looking at what the tariff will look like. We'll put that out there in September. We'll probably have a couple of rounds of that with you all, with stakeholder community and everyone, so they can see the evolution of the framework, consistent with the draft final proposal as it gets developed. And we'll have some meetings around that as well. So that's sort of the degree of activity at a high level that's happening with EDAM. Quite a bit of excitement in that area. So any questions about EDAM before I move on to energy storage enhancements?
And I do have one question on the tariff language. Would that be just partial, or how much of the draft? I realize it's still draft, but are we talking about maybe about 25%, 30%, half of the language that you're anticipating?
Well, I think it'll be a complete framework. In other words, we won't provide the exact language, but we're looking to provide the complete framework this year. As we work through details of the proposal, then the actual language itself will start getting formulated early next year. But the framework should be complete in terms of the areas of the design that we touch. We hope to be able to do that and provide, and it will leverage what we have, in our existing tariff model, if you wish, with WEIM. As you may all recall, we have a dedicated section of the tariff to the WEIM. We're looking to have sort of a similar model, which facilitates that kind of, for our customers who don't necessarily participate in other aspects of our tariff, go to one section, understand what's going on. We're looking to have some of that ease of access in the tariff as well.
And thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Well, energy storage enhancements, I haven't reported on this before, but it occurred to me, given that this is a joint item, I might at least touch on it a little bit. In this initiative, we set out to enhance the optimization, the dispatch, and the settlement of energy storage, or other resources that are similarly situated. We're making good progress. We actually posted earlier this month our draft final proposal. And we are looking to present and have a stakeholder call. Well, actually, we did on the 25th of August. Time is flying. We are going to receive comments shortly, and we've received overall, I would say, fairly positive feedback so far on this initiative. There's been a lot of support for the general course that we're taking. We've had some concerns with regards to the default energy bid that has been expressed, and we're looking into some of those concerns. And we also have been asked to expand some of the scope. We did a little bit of shuffling around with scope because some of the items related to bid cost recovery concerns that were raised, we're now going to address in the price formation initiative, which I'm going to touch on next. But it seems to be moving in the right direction. The goal is to have comments submitted to us on September 9th based on what we've been discussing thus far. But that's just sort of a general picture of energy storage and where we're going with that. Before I move to price formation. On price formation, no comments it looks like. On price formation, as you know, earlier this summer, we launched our price formation initiative, and this is an important one, obviously, for the regional markets as well. In the price formation effort, we have a collection of areas we're looking at: scarcity pricing, fast start pricing, real-time markets, multi-interval optimization, and in particular, as I was noting, with regards to how that interacts with energy storage compensation, as well as bid cost recovery related to energy storage. We also are looking at what we refer to balancing authority area level market power mitigation. And this is an interaction between EDAM as well as our WEIM in terms of how we conduct the market power mitigation. We're looking into some issues there. And of course, any other price formation issues that stakeholders might feel are necessary to look at. We posted an issue paper. That's as far as we've gotten right now. We've had a meeting on the issue paper. Before the issue paper, we had a series of workshops. We're looking to, we're getting feedback on September 21st, and we're looking to, talk about our next steps as to how we see this initiative unrolling. There will be a focus on September 20, a focus discussion, on September 21st. So we invite folks to participate on this, and we will be looking, and we recognize based on the comments we've received that there's a need to look closely to scarcity pricing, and we'll also be taking a deeper look at the fast start pricing requests that participants have put forth, because some folks have prioritized that as well. So that's sort of a look at where we're at with price formation right now. Not too much to report in terms of design, but wanted to give you a flavor of that. Okay, and now last but not least, most recently, we launched a new initiative. It's a little bit accelerated. We call it the WEIM and Washington's Climate Commitment Act Initiative. This initiative was launched so that we can support the Washington's program on GHG in the WEIM. So this is really intended to be able and be prepared by 2023 to be able to account for those requirements and reporting requirements that folks will have to Washington State. So we put out what we refer to as a straw proposal / issue paper, because we needed to do this in a fairly expedited manner. We're looking to model the Washington border and demand forecast to determine what should be reported for Washington through the WEIM. And we're going to have to update the GHG reference levels that are used today, so and the bid mitigation, so that those get also used for the Washington State's program. And also, we will be looking to ensure, that there's sufficient information for reporting to Washington State through this process. We had a workshop on August 22nd, and we hope to get written comments next week on September 6th. And on September 21st, we're looking to post our revised straw and come to you all for a joint decision in October, so that we can be ready to implement in 2023 when the Washington State program comes into effect.
I'm checking. I don't see. And I have a question on the 2023 timeframe. Is that needed at the beginning of 2023 or in any particular quarter of 2023? Do you know that?
I'm not sure. I thought it was the beginning, but I'm not 100% certain.
Okay. I just was trying to, gauge a sense of that urgency and time frame because that's not far away.
I think it's called the emissions year 2023, so I'm going to assume that it's for the full year for emissions year 2023. Any other questions on any of these items?
And we don't seem to have any questions from the governing body members, so let me go to the public. So, Roy, if we can, let's go and see if there are any public questions or comments.
Once again, if you would like to ask a question, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. And it looks like we do have one question.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kathleen Colbert from Vistra. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kathleen. Yes.
I just had a quick question. It's more of a process question. Anna, thank you for going over that summary. I think on one hand, it really highlighted how much work that you and your staff are doing, a lot of complicated work and important work very quickly. So thank you for all that and the work that you and your team are doing. I did want to note and kind of ask if there was any thinking about just how the stakeholder engagement, like how to respect constraints on the stakeholder engagement side as well. I noticed that as you walked through, and it had been on my radar as well, that comments are due back to back on next Thursday, Friday, and Monday following that on these pretty weighty topics. That's really difficult to get through internal review and approvals, which means they'll likely have to be delayed or late. And I was wondering if the CAISO had considered kind of spacing out comments a little bit more to get more involvement on maybe a more deeper level.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Kathleen. And I think it's always difficult to sort of gauge, ahead of time with many initiatives going on exactly how all this stuff falls in place. I think what we try to do, and yes, I think we may be able to, look at some of the overlap. We do try to stagger the stuff, in particular the meetings, as you know. But the back-to-back comments is something that, I will take back and make sure that, we look at that a little bit more closely. I will note, however, that if there's any difficulty, what we try to do right up front with each initiative, and this is where we get a lot of feedback from folks, we try to right up front say, this is what it's going to look like. And I'm trying to actually at these meetings as well, make sure that people are aware of that, because with the multitude of initiatives, we like to get input on that schedule right up front when we get these things sorted out. So if there is any complications or overlap, and I say that not because I don't want to take responsibility of managing that, but it just so happens that some stakeholders are involved in a multitude of stakeholder initiatives. Some are involved in just one or two. But it's really important we get feedback up front when folks see those things coming together. But on the regional market side, I will take note to make sure that if there's anything sort of crosses over in that space, we try to sequence it. We've tried to do that with some of the EDAM and, wheel through. We try to stage those appropriately, but I recognize that this can be onerous on other folks as well, and I will take that back and see if we do a better job at that.
I appreciate your consideration. Thanks.
Kathleen, thank you for your question, and Anna, appreciate that response. And I'll just add, the governing body, shares that, and they've shared that with Anna and her staff. And on the other hand, we've also worked hard on prioritizing some of this work and the need to be responsive to the issues that have arisen that were not originally anticipated. And it's been a conflict there, and I'm hoping that we ultimately see some light at the end of the tunnel. so that it can be nicely staggered. And Roy, I'm taking that you see no other comments.
We have no other comments in queue at this time.
Okay. So, Anna, you still have the floor. I'm going to allow you to move on to that next agenda item, which is the governing body planning calendar.
Yes, thank you. So we can go to the next slide, please. So as we see, as we're starting to wrap up the year, I don't know about you guys, but it's been a fast and furious year. We're coming to the October joint meeting, and we'll have a number of items before you all on joint decision. There'll be the WEIM resource efficiency evaluation. We also will hopefully have the program on the WEIM greenhouse gas enhancements, as I just noted. And we also have additional parameter changes that we're looking to for, and these market parameter changes, and I actually didn't brief you all on that today, but this has been going on for some time with regards to some scheduling priority parameters in our market software, and that does fall under joint authority decisional. That will be coming to you in October, and those are all joint decisional. We also will have the regularly scheduled briefings, as you see listed in there, and we'll continue with our briefings on policy initiatives as well. In December, there won't be any decisional items, but I would like to note that there'll be an EDAM briefing, which we hope to be, to be a robust briefing of the complete draft proposal as it will be at that point. That will be a briefing to both you, I believe, and the Board of Governors, and it should be, as I said, pretty robust. It's an important briefing for us in December, as well as the additional regularly scheduled briefing. So that should pretty much take us to the end of the year in terms of the decisional items coming to you. And this pretty much will mimic, you can see in Q4 there, what I just went through.
Yeah. So, Anna, another clarification question, since EDAM and GRC approval is not in December, is that now currently contemplated to be the next meeting? And I'm sorry for not knowing if it's the end of January or beginning of February.
My understanding is right now that we are targeting for that end of January meeting, but I don't know if that has been officially released, but that is our target. It just depends on a number of issues, obviously.
Right.
But that's, I believe, our target still.
Okay. I'm going to double check and see if the governing body members have any questions. I do not see anyone trying to ask. So Anna, thank you. Both for the policy initiative overview and the calendar for the rest of the year. That's helpful for everyone listening in to know the sequencing and where things are going. And it gets back to Kathleen's comment on August activity, and then where does it end up? So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I am going to ask the governing body members if they have any questions on the informational reports. And I see head nodding, they've gone through them. Okay, so unless one of the governing body members has an item that they raise, and I'm not seeing that they're asking to do that, the meeting will stand adjourned, and I thank everyone for their time today.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, sir. Conzioka, thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.